All right, diving in. We've got this fantastic Simon Sinek interview to unpack, and I'm excited to get into it with you.
Yeah, his ideas about leadership, purpose, all that, especially in a world that feels like it's constantly changing.
Exactly. It really struck a chord with me.
It's a conversation that feels relevant now, but also like timeless,
Yeah,
you know? He mixes those personal stories
for sure.
with these really sharp observations about like society and
Yeah.
makes you think about not just how we work, but how we live.
Totally. Okay, so let's break down one of the biggest things he talks about, finding your why, that core purpose, right?
Yeah.
I was fascinated by how he links it back to childhood experiences.
Uh-huh.
It's like even if we stray from that path, that initial spark kind of stays with us.
And what's interesting is there's actual research to back that up.
Oh, really?
Studies show that our early experiences, the values and beliefs we're exposed to,
Yeah,
those really shape our motivations as adults.
that makes sense.
It's not just like a feel-good philosophy.
Yeah.
There's some real psychology behind it.
So those early years imprint a sort of internal compass on us, even if we don't always follow it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, speaking of figuring things out, I was struck by that story Sinek told about his friend who was struggling, like both personally and professionally.
Right.
And it wasn't until she started helping him with his problems that her own solutions kind of became clear.
That story just perfectly illustrates his belief that helping others isn't just about being altruistic.
Yeah,
It can actually be a powerful way to like discover yourself.
it's true.
And there's a ton of research on that helper's high,
Yeah.
that rush of endorphins and sense of purpose
Yeah.
we get from supporting others.
Yeah.
It literally changes your brain,
Wow.
rewires it for happiness and resilience.
So it's not just about being selfless, it's like this feedback loop.
Right.
Helping others actually unlocks our own potential.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you think those self-help gurus might have it backwards.
Yeah.
Maybe it's less about looking inward and more about,
Looking outward,
Yeah.
Sinek argues we're wired for connection, for contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
I like that.
And when we deny that, we miss out on something fundamental about, like, what it means to be human.
That really resonates with me, especially,
Yeah.
how interconnected everything is.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now I gotta get your take on this whole mindset and privilege debate.
Okay.
I found Sinek's stance really interesting.
Yeah.
I initially thought maybe mindset is a privilege,
Oh, interesting.
but he pushes back on that.
It does.
Says it's something we can all cultivate regardless of our background.
This is where it gets, like, really nuanced.
Yeah.
Because, while Sinek is all about our ability to choose our mindset,
Yeah.
research also shows that our socioeconomic background, our early childhood experiences,
Yes.
even genetics, play a role in shaping our outlook, our resilience.
That's true.
It's not a level playing field out there.
But I loved how Sinek uses his own life as an example.
Oh.
He talks about believing he'd be a millionaire even when he was struggling, even resorting to, like, shoplifting food.
Mm-hmm.
It's like his mindset, that belief, became his superpower.
Yeah, it's such a powerful story,
It is.
and it shows the potential of the human mind.
Right.
But I think it's also important to acknowledge that not everyone has those same opportunities or support systems.
Right, of course.
What's interesting, though, is Sinek's not saying
Yeah.
we should just be blindly optimistic or anything like that.
Okay.
He's saying we have a choice in how we see our experiences.
Yeah.
And choosing to focus on possibility, even when things are tough,
Yeah.
that can be transformative.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's not ignoring the challenges. It's about where we put our energy.
Exactly.
Instead of getting stuck on the limitations,
Uh-huh.
we can choose to focus on potential and solutions.
And that puts the power back in our hands, doesn't it?
Totally does.
And it connects back to his whole thing about the why.
Oh, yeah.
When you have a clear sense of purpose, it fuels that resilience,
Yeah.
gives you a reason to keep going, even when things are rough.
Okay, changing gears a bit, I was super curious to hear his thoughts on remote work.
Yeah.
Especially with so many of us still figuring this whole thing out.
Yeah, it's a new landscape.
He seems to acknowledge both the good and the bad, like flexible schedules, more autonomy, but also the potential downsides.
He points out a challenge that I think a lot of us have probably faced.
What's that?
Maintaining boundaries,
Right.
That line between work life and personal life can get so blurry when your home is your office.
It's true.
And it's interesting how he connects that to the rise of what he calls emotional outsourcing at work.
Yes. He talks about how without those after-work social outlets, some people end up relying on their colleagues for emotional support,
Yeah. And
which, especially for those who are really empathetic, can lead to burnout.
studies show that kind of emotional overload can really hurt our well-being.
Oh, yeah.
Stress, anxiety, even physical health issues.
I can see that.
It's not sustainable long-term.
So what's the solution? Do we all need to rush back to the office? Or is there a way to make remote work more sustainable?
I think what Sinek is saying points to a need for more awareness
Okay.
and being intentional.
Yeah.
We have to be mindful of those boundaries,
All right.
create clear expectations
Huh.
and really prioritize our own well-being.
Yeah.
It might even mean a shift in company culture
Oh, interesting.
where open communication about work-life balance is actually encouraged and supported.
That makes sense.
It's not about demonizing remote work. It's about figuring out
Yeah.
how to make it work for us, not the other way around.
So it's not about where we work, it's more about how we work.
Exactly.
Correct.
It's about creating an environment
Yeah.
that supports both productivity and well-being, whether it's physical or virtual.
I like that.
And it's about recognizing our own responsibility to advocate for what we need, set healthy boundaries for ourselves.
Totally. That leads perfectly into another one of Sinek's, I guess you could say, radical ideas. This need for more honesty and open communication at work.
Yeah.
He imagines a future where we're just upfront about everything.
About everything.
Yeah. Our career goals, our boundaries, even the possibility of having multiple jobs.
He's suggesting we treat work relationships more like, well, any other relationship,
Right.
with honesty, respect, and a willingness to just be open, even when it's tough.
I love that idea.
Imagine being able to say,
Yeah.
hey, I'm really into this project, but I also need to leave by 5 to pick up my kids. I'm trying out some side gigs to, be more creative. Can we talk about that?
That level of transparency could really change how we work,
Okay.
but it would require such a massive shift in mindset.
Oh, yeah, from both individuals and companies.
For sure.
It means challenging those deep-seated fears we have.
Like,
The fear of being judged, the fear of losing our jobs, of not fitting in,
it would take a lot of courage to be that vulnerable.
and to really believe that honesty is better than hiding behind
Yeah.
those carefully constructed professional personas.
And it might even lead to a world where work feels less like, I don't know,
Less like
a transaction
yeah,
and more like a collaboration
I like that.
where people and companies can actually support each other's growth and well-being.
What a powerful vision. Okay, I got to bring up something that I know a lot of our listeners are thinking about. Generational differences.
Oh, yeah.
Sinek has some, shall we say, strong opinions about Gen Z,
He does.
especially when it comes to their resilience, or maybe lack thereof.
He makes a point about how social media's often distorted view of work
Yes.
might be setting them up for some serious disappointment.
Oh, absolutely.
They see these curated highlight reel versions of success.
Yeah, it's all perfect and glamorous.
And it makes it hard to have a realistic view of what it takes to actually achieve those goals.
It's like they're being sold a vanity.
And when real life throws those curveballs, the setbacks, the rejections,
Yeah.
it's like, do they have the tools to cope?
And all the research on social media's impact on mental health is relevant here.
For sure.
Studies show a clear connection between excessive social media use
Yeah.
and higher rates of anxiety, depression,
Wow.
especially among young people.
But to be fair to Gen Z, Sinek also recognizes the huge challenges they're facing, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Climate change, economic uncertainty, political polarization.
It's a lot to deal with.
And we can't discount their anxieties just because they haven't lived through the same things as, previous generations.
It's not about comparing struggles.
Right.
It's about understanding that each generation has its own unique set of obstacles.
Exactly. And I love Sinek's solution to focus on developing human skills.
Yeah, those are essential.
Things like communication, giving feedback, conflict resolution.
These are skills for navigating any challenge,
Right.
no matter when you were born.
It's true.
They go way beyond just the workplace, too.
Oh, absolutely.
They're the foundation for healthy relationships, personal growth, making a positive impact on the world.
It's about recognizing that we're all in this together. Instead of pitting generations against each other, what if we focused on those skills that help us connect and collaborate?
That's an inspiring thought.
It is, right. Okay, so speaking of bridging divides, I loved Sinek's take on leadership.
Yeah.
How we need to move beyond those traditional, often, aggressive leadership styles.
He argues we need to bring in those quote-unquote feminine qualities.
Right.
Empathy, patience, nurturing. Right. And it's not about men versus women.
Right.
It's about recognizing that these qualities are valuable for anyone in a leadership role.
It's about being a good human.
Exactly.
I loved that story he told about the female military officer who achieved incredible success by focusing on the well-being of her team instead of just, performance metrics.
Yeah.
She created this environment of trust, support, and open communication.
And that shift in leadership style led to amazing results.
It did.
It's a powerful example of how leading with empathy and compassion can be so effective.
It's not about being soft.
Right.
It's about understanding that people do their best work when they feel valued and connected.
It's like that saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
So true.
And that's true in all aspects of life, not just at work.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Purpose, helping others, mindset, remote work, generational differences, leadership styles.
It's a lot to process.
It is.
Yeah.
But what's really sticking with me is,
as we're unpacking all of this, that question Sinek asked about our greatest fear, it just keeps coming back to it.
Yeah, it's a real gut punch, isn't it? Makes you stop and think, am I really living in a way that feels true to myself?
It definitely invites some introspection, doesn't it? Forces us to confront those uncomfortable truths we often try to avoid.
Totally.
And I think for many of us, those fears, the things we hesitate to even acknowledge, they come from a lack of honesty.
A lack of honesty.
Yeah, both with ourselves and with others.
Oh, interesting.
We build these walls, to protect ourselves, but they often end up trapping us in a life that doesn't really reflect who we are or what we want.
It's like we're afraid to be vulnerable, afraid of judgment, so we settle for a version of ourselves that feels safe. But ultimately, it leaves us feeling kind of empty.
Right. And those walls, they might feel protective in the moment.
Yeah.
But they can also become prisons.
Oh, I see what you mean.
They keep us from those genuine connections, from taking risks, from really going after what we want.
That's a good point.
Sinek talked a lot about those essential human skills, communication, conflict resolution, empathy.
Yeah.
Those are the keys to breaking down those walls.
They are, aren't they?
And having those honest conversations that can actually lead to real growth and connection.
Absolutely. Without those skills, it's like, what are we left with? Either avoid those tough conversations altogether,
right,
letting resentment and frustration build up,
or we handle them poorly, creating more conflict and damaging those relationships.
I loved that analogy he used about how we often approach those conversations like a binary. Yes or no, right or wrong.
Oh yeah, that black and white thinking.
It just doesn't allow for any nuance or understanding.
It's like we're trying to win a debate instead of trying to understand each other.
Exactly.
He suggests a more nuanced approach, one that recognizes the complexity of relationships and the need for ongoing dialogue, even when it's uncomfortable.
It's about accepting that we don't always have to agree.
Right.
But we can still respect each other's perspectives and try to see where they're coming from.
And that requires us to step outside of our own little bubbles.
For sure.
And really listen to what the other person is saying, even if we don't agree with them right away.
That can be so challenging, especially in today's world where everything feels so divided.
It is, but it's essential if we want to build healthy relationships, both personally and professionally.
It all comes back to that idea that Sinek keeps emphasizing. We're all human beings, and we all crave connection and understanding.
And those things can only happen when we're willing to be open and honest with each other.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked a lot about these honest conversations in general, but I want to bring it back to the workplace for a minute.
Okay.
And specifically to those generational differences that Sinek seems to be so concerned about.
Right.
He really doesn't hold back on that, does he?
He doesn't sugarcoat it, that's for sure.
He suggests that Gen Z might not be as equipped to handle the challenges and setbacks that are just a part of, any job. And while some people might disagree with that...
Oh, yeah, it's a controversial topic.
It's definitely a perspective worth thinking about.
He links that concern to their constant exposure to social media's often, let's say, curated view of work and life in general.
It's all highlight reels and perfect moments.
Yeah, they don't often see the behind-the-scenes struggles, the failures, the rejection.
Right, all the things that are a normal part of everyone's journey.
And there's actually research to support this.
Oh, really?
Studies have shown a clear link between excessive social media use and things like increased anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, especially in young people.
That makes sense. It's like they're constantly comparing themselves
Hmm.
to these idealized versions of others.
And it's important to acknowledge that Gen Z faces its own unique set of challenges.
Oh, absolutely.
Things like climate change, economic uncertainty, all that.
And we can't just dismiss their concerns because they haven't necessarily lived through the same things as previous generations.
It's not about comparing struggles, right?
Exactly.
It's about recognizing that each generation faces its own unique obstacles.
And those obstacles shape how they see the world and how they experience it.
This is where Sinek's emphasis on those human skills becomes so relevant.
Those skills, those are essential no matter what generation you're from.
Exactly.
What are some examples again?
Communication, feedback, conflict resolution, emotional regulation.
Those are the tools,
Those are the tools that help us build resilience, adaptability, strong relationships.
Yeah, all the things that are essential for just navigating life.
Exactly. Whether it's work, relationships, personal growth, it's all connected.
And it's not just about teaching these skills, right?
No, it's about creating an environment where those skills are valued,
Oh, interesting.
where they're encouraged,
How do we do that?
by fostering a culture of open communication, empathy, collaboration.
Yeah, make it safe for people to express themselves.
Exactly, to ask for help, to learn from their mistakes.
And moving away from that old school hierarchical model of leadership.
Right, where people are afraid to speak up or challenge the way things are done.
It's about recognizing that we can all learn from each other, no matter our age or experience.
Absolutely, and that's how we create a more equitable and inclusive workplace.
One where everyone feels valued and respected. It's interesting how Sinek connects those generational tensions in the workplace back to a lack of honesty and open communication.
Mm-hmm. He does.
He imagines this future where employees feel comfortable being upfront about everything, like their career goals, their personal boundaries, even the possibility of having multiple jobs.
He even uses the term polywork.
Polywork.
Yeah, to describe this idea of having multiple jobs or commitments.
Okay.
Kind of like, polyamorous relationships where everyone's aware of the arrangement and consents to it.
That's an interesting comparison.
It highlights his point about the need for transparency and open communication in all our relationships, not just at work.
It's about being honest and upfront about what we want and what we're willing to give.
Imagine a workplace where people feel empowered to say,
Yeah.
I'm really passionate about this project, but I also need to prioritize my family time.
Or I'm exploring a side hustle to, feed my creative soul. Can we talk about that openly?
Exactly. Imagine that level of honesty.
It would be amazing, but it would require a huge shift in mindset.
A huge shift for both individuals and organizations.
We'd have to let go of those fears of judgment, of rejection, and really embrace the idea that our worth isn't tied to, how much we produce or how well we fit into a specific mold.
It would take courage to be that vulnerable.
It would, wouldn't it? And trust.
Trust that honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, actually leads to stronger relationships and a more fulfilling work experience.
It would require companies to really rethink their approach to work, to move away from that traditional hierarchical model.
Yeah, it's top-down approach.
And embrace something more flexible, more adaptable, more human-centered.
It's a powerful vision, but it makes you wonder, can we actually create workplaces like that?
Yeah.
Places where people feel empowered to be their true selves.
Right, to pursue their passions both inside and outside of that traditional 9-to-5 structure.
It's a big question, and there's no easy answer.
I know, it's a lot to unpack.
But I think Sinek's insights provide a good starting point.
Oh, totally.
It starts with those human skills, those communication skills, empathy, conflict resolution.
Right.
And it requires a willingness to challenge the way things have always been done.
You create something new, something better.
It's about recognizing that we're all in this together and that our collective well-being depends on our ability to connect, collaborate, and support each other.
It's interesting how Sinek connects those generational tensions in the workplace back to, this lack of honesty and open communication.
He does.
He envisions this future where employees feel comfortable being upfront about everything. Their career aspirations, their boundaries, even the possibility of, having multiple jobs. It's radical, isn't it?
It is, but it also makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
He's basically saying, let's treat each other like adults, have open and honest conversations, and create work environments that respect individual needs and aspirations.
And that ties back to those human skills he keeps emphasizing.
Right.
Communication, empathy, conflict resolution.
These aren't just nice to have soft skills.
There is, especially in a world where remote work and flexible schedules are becoming the norm.
Exactly. And he's not saying we need to get rid of remote work or go back to the old ways of doing things.
Right.
He's saying we need to evolve.
We need to adapt.
Find new ways of working together.
That honor both individual needs and organizational goals.
So it's not about where we work, it's more about how we work, right?
Exactly. It's about the culture, the environment we create.
Whether we're in the same physical space or connecting virtually.
It's about recognizing that we're all in this together.
And that our well-being depends on our ability to connect, collaborate, support each other. You know, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, it's amazing to see how all these ideas we've been talking about, purpose, mindset, honesty, generational differences, the future of work.
They're all connected.
It's like Sinek is weaving together these seemingly disparate threads and revealing the underlying principles that tie them all together.
And it all boils down to that fundamental belief in human connection.
Yeah. It's about recognizing that we're not just cogs in a machine.
We're human beings.
With needs, aspirations, and the potential to create something truly meaningful in the world.
And the real power of these insights, it lies in their application, you know?
Right. It's not just about understanding these ideas intellectually.
It's about putting them into practice.
Living them out in our daily lives.
In our relationships, in the way we work, in the way we lead.
It's about making conscious choices that align with those values. Honesty, service, understanding.
It's about choosing to be the change we want to see in the world.
Embracing vulnerability, having those tough conversations.
Leading with empathy and compassion.
Recognizing that we all have a role to play in creating a world that is more just, equitable, and fulfilling for everyone.
And as we wrap up, I'm left with this feeling of hope.
Hope?
Yeah, and inspiration.
I feel it too.
We have the power to create a better future. I really believe that.
And Sinek's insights give us a roadmap to get there.
A starting point for sure.
So thanks for joining us on this journey.
We hope it sparked some new ideas for you.
And remember, the conversation doesn't end here.
Keep questioning. Keep exploring those big ideas.
Until next time. You know, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something Sinek talked about, this idea of the changing definition of work.
Yeah, it's like the traditional 9 to 5.
Right.
It's definitely not the only model anymore.
He even brought up quiet quitting, you know.
Where you just do the bare minimum.
Yeah, meet the requirements, but no more.
What do you think is going on there? Is it a Gen Z thing or is it something deeper?
I think it's more than just a generational trend.
You think so?
It feels like it speaks to a larger shift in values, priorities, you know?
For some, maybe it's disengagement. They just don't care about the work.
Yeah, but for others,
it could be about setting boundaries, protecting their time and energy in a work culture that demands a lot.
Makes you wonder if the system itself needs to change, right?
Like maybe it's not the employees, it's the expectations, the structures that are in place.
And that's where Sinek's idea about more honesty at work comes in.
The radical transparency thing.
Yeah, he says if both sides were more upfront about what they need, what they expect.
It could prevent a lot of that tension, the resentment.
Instead of this whole game of unspoken expectations and like passive-aggressive disengagement.
You'd have open conversations about what you're willing to give, what you expect in return.
So imagine you could just say, I'm happy to give my all during work hours, but my personal time is off limits.
Or the company says, this is a high-intensity role. It requires flexibility. Are you up for that?
It would require a huge shift in mindset for everyone.
It would, wouldn't it?
But could you imagine the benefits? More trust, less burnout.
And better alignment. You know, everyone's on the same page about values and expectations. And
it all goes back to Sinek's belief in human connection, right?
Like, let's be real with each other.
Treat each other like adults.
Have honest conversations, create work environments that work for everyone.
And that circles back to those human skills he keeps talking about. Communication, empathy, conflict resolution.
It's not just fluff. It's essential stuff.
Especially in a world with so much remote work, flexible schedules.
He's not saying get rid of it all, go back to the old ways.
No, he's saying we need to evolve.
Find new ways of working that work for everyone.
So it's not about where you work, it's about how you work.
Building a culture of trust, respect, open communication.
Whether you're in the office or on Zoom.
Recognizing we're all in this together. Our well-being depends on it.
Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, it's amazing how everything connects, you know?
All these ideas we've been talking about, they're all interwoven.
Purpose, mindset, honesty, the future of work.
Sinek has a way of taking these big, complex ideas,
And making them feel so relevant to everyday life.
and it comes back to that belief in the power of human connection.
We're not just cogs in a machine.
We're human beings with needs, with aspirations, with the potential to create something amazing.
And the real power of all of this, I think.
Putting it into practice.
Taking these insights and applying them to our lives.
Making choices that align with those values. Honesty, service, understanding.
Being the change.
Embracing those tough conversations. Leading with empathy.
Recognizing that we all have a part to play in creating a better world.
A world that's more just, more equitable, more fulfilling for everyone.
I love that.
As we finish this conversation, I feel so hopeful, inspired.
Me too.
We really can create a better future.
And Sinek's insights give us the tools, the inspiration to do it.
They're a starting point.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope it got you thinking.
And remember, this is just the beginning.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep.
And until next time.
Keep those conversations going.